Good morning, yonder tentacle enjoyers. It's May 20th, and I'm Samuel McCullough, one of the hosts of Leviathan News. I'm joined as always with DeFi Advisor, coming from another continent, but fully awake, ready to go, juiced, as they say.
This time I'm awake, yeah. This time I'm awake.
Always available, both of us. And today we have a special reply guy, and that's Colin Platt from Liquity.
Hey there. How's it going?
Those are good replies. And today we're not talking about Liquity today because we are going to be diving into news. We've had Colin on several times over the past couple of months, and you should go back and take a listen to what they're planning for Liquid. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about it a little bit because we can spend a few minutes on this. I really enjoyed you guys' white paper that came out. Happy to see all the things that are slated for Liquity in the future. Liquity V2 is going to be pretty cool, right? So for anybody that doesn't know, Liquid came out in DeFi summer 2021. It took $1 million in, or sorry, not just $1 million, but 1 million ETH in TVL at the time, issued as LUSD. Unfortunately, interest rates wrecked it when they went to 5%, and Liquity V1 didn't have the ability to adjust interest rates. And now they're coming out with a new version that keeps roughly the same design, but instead of redeeming based on the collateralization ratios, they're going to be redeeming based on interest rates. And so that white paper is available. We got it in the show notes, and it's definitely worth the read. So I'm going to full send Liquity V2 when it hits the block, the chain, whatever you want to call it. Is there a cool way of saying deploying something?
I mean, deploying is pretty cool.
Deploying.
Launching.
Deploying
Bring it into immutable bytecode.
Deploying is cooler than launching. What did you say?
I like deploying. I think it's cool.
Just loading up the bazooka and blasting it out.
Military guy, folks. Military guy.
There we go. Okay, so the big news that came out today is that Craig Wright is not Satoshi. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
I am so shocked.
But how did they get to that conclusion this time?
Well, there's been a lot of court cases going on for a long time. Craig Wright has used his position as a fake to raise billions of dollars from people like Calvin Ayre, and then also the creation of Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision, which has been used to fund his legal drama around the world as he has claimed he is Satoshi and has gone on this litigation spree trying to capture as much IP in the patent courts as possible. And a lot of people have been unhappy about this. This has been something that's ongoing for many years. I remember when I started full-time in 2017, this whole Craig Wright thing was still going on. Obviously, I think there was still questions. People were like unabashedly saying that Craig Wright was a fake and a liar at the time, but it's taken almost a decade for it to work through the courts. And we finally have one of the first major legal decisions in that fight of Bitcoin developers and other people against Craig Wright. And that was through this case known as COPA via Wright. That was the judgment came down from the UK High Courts just today, a little while ago. And so the case was brought by the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, who was a group of people that were fighting to keep as much of the Bitcoin IP open source and out of the hands of Craig Stephen Wright. And what was really interesting was that the judge in this case, after seeing all of the just crazy testimony that took place, the forgeries, the perjury, he put it to test in his summary. And I just want to read some of this, right? So CSW claimed to be Satoshi, which we've known to be fake for a long time. But in this judgment, there's some really stunning things that the judge said. I've got it right here. And so point number 2, thus Dr. Wright presents himself as an extremely clever person. However, in my judgment, he is not as clever as he thinks. In both written evidence and in days of oral evidence under cross-examination, I'm entirely satisfied that Dr. Wright lied to the court extensively and repeatedly. Most of his lies related to the documents he forged, which purported to support his claim. And so all his lies and forged documents were in support of his biggest lie, his claim to be Satoshi Nakamoto. And so many of Dr. Wright's lies contained a grain of truth, but there were many which did not and were outright lies. As soon as one lie was exposed, Dr. Wright resorted to further lies and evasions. The final destination frequently turned out to be either Dr. Wright blaming other, often unidentified person for his predicament, or what can only be described as technobabble delivered by him in the witness box. Although as a person with expertise in IT security, Dr. Wright must have thought his forgeries would provide convincing evidence to support his claim to be Satoshi or some other point of detail and would go undetected, the evidence shows. As I explained below, most of his forgeries turned out to be clumsy. So he presented a lot of documents that just ended up being completely crazy, and this whole thing has now backfired on him. It's quite possibly a major judgment because he has several other litigation efforts that are ongoing against Bitcoin developers, crypto exchanges, Coinbase and Kraken, and several others as well too. And so after the decision, BSV fell 40%. And this concludes a 6-week trial against Wright. So finally get some closure on this. You know, it's pretty crazy because, you know, some of the things that the judge says in here is what we've known all along, right? Is that if Dr. Wright was Satoshi, he would have all of this evidence that he just doesn't have. Additionally, he would be able to sign a transaction, right? So like here, Satoshi would be most unlikely to have any real difficulty in proving he was Satoshi. He'd be able to sign a transaction or have some early documents or know something hidden in the Genesis block, or even have some of the private keys, even if he lost them. And he wouldn't have resorted to forgery as well too. So thankfully, hopefully this brings like counter litigation against Craig Wright now for his false claims and perjury that he's delivered to the court.
What a weird case and story, you know. Like I'm not that much of a veteran in crypto to like be as familiar as many with all the details and the story there, because I never found it like that interesting, to be honest, and it never like seemed that there's an actual chance that the guy is actually Satoshi. And I always like was kind of like how does he expect the world to think that he's Satoshi if he's not willing to ever do anything that's going to prove it? And it was always kind of weird for me. And I kind of hope that this is like in a way another circle closing for the industry in like in its maturity of like let's let's get that part of the story at least behind us, because like it keeps us I don't know, keeps us in the past and with dealing with irrelevant stuff.
I think the bigger issue here is that since the emergence of Bitcoin, there's been a lot of private actors who have been trying to claim IP rights over open source code. And this is not just limited to this Craig Wright decision here. There's an ongoing global battle to essentially claim as much IP based off of open source code, which by private entities. And I think that it's I don't know enough about patent law to make any like extreme anything other than some reply guy statements here. But you know, this is one of like the dirtier aspects of the legal system that just has to be worked through, especially when dealing with like open source code.
I think definitely hear that, and I think be careful with what I say, because clearly this guy is very litigious, even if he's proven himself unsuccessful in court recently. I think there was something different about Craig Wright in that even from the beginning, people that were looking at it, I can't remember when it came out. I want to say 2017, but I could be wrong.
I think it was around there.
I mean, it was pretty obvious for most people, I think, from the beginning that it wasn't very serious. And he managed to convince people who were quite well read into the Bitcoin space, and one or two that were quite technical as well, including Gavin Andreessen, who was kind of the first doxed dev on Bitcoin back in 2009, 2010, like early. And the fact that he did that, I think most people still kind of said, okay, there's something really, really off about this whole thing. And I think if you meet the guy, like I met him once, unfortunately, he is odd as cheese, as the Brits would say. Like I would find it very hard to take him seriously. And when you kind of saw these things happen in court, it was just kind of a constant train wreck. And I think that it's reassuring to see that the legal system, in this case at least, went through and took the time to go through that. And I think that what you were showing and reading there really highlights how much he was using the court system against a lot of small people. There was the guy in Norway who was brought to trial, thankfully won. But it was just purely revenge, trying to make this proof. And there was a lot of speculation on exactly why he was doing it. Some of it is probably, as you say, purely around patents. But I think a lot more was really around trying to create a profitable trading advantage for himself on BSV, maybe before that on BCH. I don't really know, but there was definitely a profit motive, and it was above and beyond just controlling patents and trying to sell those.
Yeah, I think one of the things that he was trying to do was sue the Bitcoin core team to force them to hard fork Bitcoin to give him access to quote unquote Satoshi's keys, right, or Satoshi's Bitcoins, so that he could give himself 1 million Bitcoin. And that's another ongoing case that still exists, but hopefully is going to be influenced in a positive light for the entire crypto community as this moves forward.
I mean, I think, again, and like you, I'm not an expert, but I guess just from skimming this thing, he's probably got other bigger concerns than any ongoing stuff. Like if a court writes down that you're using the court system to abuse it, and I don't know if they said perjury, but basically it was heavily implied that he was making false statements repeatedly to the court. I don't know what that means in the UK legal system, but I would have to imagine that would be something that itself would bring something more resembling criminal charges against him for that abuse.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't use a court system to try to like take down your enemies, lie, and then just say, okay, lost that one. That's a free one for me.
Can we talk about the UK court system? I didn't know this, but apparently they got rid of double jeopardy like a couple of years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people does that really affect, though?
I don't know. I mean,
I mean, it's an oddity, I guess, but yeah.
yeah. Okay, let's move on to some crazier news, right? Okay, so did you watch any of the Pump.fun exploit that happened last week?
You sure that's crazier, by the way? You sure about that?
Well, I think it's got a pretty cool story in the Pump.fun.
That's
So
for sure.
I don't know if we talked about this. Did you guys talk about this on the panel on Thursday?
No, I don't think so. But the Pump.fun stuff, no, we didn't get to it because we had Austin and Captain Rational on, and we actually had together with Millie and myself, and we actually had a very interesting discussion, mostly about the SAB 121 and that stuff. Honestly, if people are into it, I really recommend you check that discussion. Still relevant, let's say.
So let's roll through it again. Pump.fun was exploited by a former employee, which I don't know. Maybe Colin, you can provide some color on this. In that, okay, so here's what happened, right? Essentially, a former Pump.fun employee used his understanding of the code as of working there, and to exploit an issue that he knew about and had reported internally. And after he left the company, I guess he still had access to some of the private keys or some internal operations that allowed him to do this, to complete this exploit. So what he did is he used flash loans from MarginFi to essentially push all of the bonding curves on Pump.fun to 100%. So when you create a meme coin on Pump.fun, it creates it at like a minimum market cap value. If it hits maximum market cap value, then the Pump.fun code takes the liquidity that's there, takes the token and the liquidity, the Solana that it's paired with, and then moves it over to Radium. And so what this former employee did, his name is Jarrett Dunn, he essentially was able to flash loan, borrow some SOL, and then use it to push the bonding curves to 100%. Once they were 100%, he was then able to get all the tokens and then pay back his loan and keep all the Solana that's there. And so this happened. He was able to exploit about $2 million worth of Solana at the time. And what's funny about this is that he was just completely public about it on Twitter. During the exploit, he was posting everything, essentially making fun of the Pump.fun team, making fun of everybody else. It seems like he was having some mental issues at the time. And after that happened, there was this crazy story, which I hope we can bring to light over the next few days. So there's a group called Groom Lake, which I don't know if you guys have heard about, but they are a private intelligence company that is able to go out and based on on-chain data, essentially go and find people. So if you have money stolen or there's an exploit or anything negative happens, like in this case with the exploit and $2 million is taken, you give them a call and they're able to essentially help track down the person. And that's what happened. Within 24 hours, a third-party, I guess, investor in the Pump.fun, maybe it was Pump.fun itself, worked with Groom Lake to go out and find Jared Allen. He was arrested by British authorities, and now he has been released on bail. Released on bail, according to his own statements. Right, he's running his own account now. He's back. He's back on Twitter, still posting, still a little unhinged, but thanks to the Groom Lake guys, they were able to find him within 24 hours, get him arrested, and get him set to be going before a judge in the next couple of days.
Wow. Was he just sure that he won't get caught? Like, what's the story then?
I think he knew.
Like, how can you explain?
No, he didn't care. I mean, I think his mom died recently, and he's been having some like issues.
Wow.
And so he just said fuck it and decided to go out there and run this exploit. So now he's released on bail. He has to come back to the UK police in August. He has to not talk to people, probably within Pump.fun. And apparently he was in the hospital as well, too.
Weird. Yeah, the whole thing seemed really, really weird. British legal system weird seems to be the theme of the show today.
Should we put on some accents? Give me your best British accent, Colin.
Oh God, I'm not going to try. I lived in London for nearly a decade, and I'm not even going to try that.
I think it's rubbed off a little bit.
Go for it, Sam. What is the shame?
Why wouldn't you?
But I don't think I can do a British one. I can do a bit of Scottish, but that's not where any of this is taking place.
Now you have to do it.
No, I mean, I remember when I first heard about the Pump.fun, like this group that I'm in with a bunch of investors that are quite active in the Solana space came out and said instantly, like, this is weird. This guy's doxed. Like, everybody knows who he is. And I think Groom Lake figured it out immediately. I don't think it was even that hard for them to figure it out. And it's kind of like, well, why would this happen? I mean, I guess it's one way of sending a message, and maybe they'll figure out something that doesn't result in a lot of jail time. Remember, it's on America, so he's probably not going to jail for 50 years or anything. But I would imagine that there's at least some fines and something. But again, not an expert on the legal system.
Well, you never know. U.S. authorities might be able to go after him.
Maybe.
Because it might be like U.S. persons who are affected by this.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm sure there are. But Pump.fun, then, did they really want to open that Pandora's box? I mean... I've been really impressed with Pump.fun. If you look at how much money they've been collecting over the past couple of months, pretty incredible. But like top 3, like if you look at all of the apps across all of the networks, Pump.fun was like 3rd coming into this, behind Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Pump.pmf, huh?
Yeah.
No, I mean, just all the numbers coming out of Solana around meme coin are just mind-boggling right now. Like, to consider this a chain that most people had kind of counted out a year ago, after all the FTX stuff, just to see it come back is really, really impressive. And equally impressive is the number of people that are very upset about that fact, or chalk it up. Like, for a long time, everybody you talked to about Solana has just said, it's all wash trading, it's all wash trading. And then it kind of became undeniable one of these days, just how much activity there was going through, paying fees and things like this, trading. And it just seemed like everybody has been talking about it since about Christmas. So great for everybody involved, I guess. And, maybe it will remind people that were very dismissive of Solana, meme coins, all this other stuff, that it's worth continuing to keep an open mind, even if you don't necessarily find it interesting.
Yeah. So they were on a $160 million annualized like revenue from fees. Crazy for an application.
Insane.
From the beginning of March, they'd made about $20 million or $22 million.
That's insane.
And they seem to have hit perfect product market fit for the market.
How much was exploited, by the way?
About $2 million.
And is it refunded?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I wonder if that 161 figure, how much of it is actually due to the company versus, I don't know. Is this like Uniswap fees as well?
Well, it's annualized. So like when you create a meme coin, you have to pay a little bit. So there's like thousands of meme coins being created through Pump.fun every single day. And that's where they earn their fee revenue. So the 160 million is annualized based on current projections. But it's from March, they've made about $22 million in about 2 months, about $10 million monthly.
But I mean, if they lost 2 million, I guess from what you're saying here, it sounds like they and then kind of move on from there. Should be great.
Yeah. So essentially, Pump.fun came out and said that, hey, this took place. We're fixing our code, and they're gonna make users whole. So I guess they're gonna use part of that 22 million that they made. They'll pay out $2 million. So any users who were affected by this, they're gonna refund 100% of the funds. They're also lowering trading fees to 0 for the next 7 days, and they're taking quick steps to redeploy the contracts. The contracts are actually redeployed really quickly, like within, I think, 72 hours, they're back up.
Man, if your debt would be printing that much money, you would be up in those contracts pretty quickly as well,
Yeah.
Like any day without it, it's money on the table, and it also opens up room for other services to emerge. So like business-wise, they have to respond extremely quickly and efficiently on something like that. And I wish them luck for sure. I actually think that, like I said earlier, man, the public demands that. Once that service was out, you could see that the public actually demands it. That's what people actually want to do on chain right now. With all due respect to sophisticated builders like Colin and yourself, Sam. The people want to play, first of all.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be dismissive of that. I mean, just because, we talk a lot about DeFi, and obviously we work in DeFi. We like DeFi. It shouldn't be dismissive of what other people are using the chain for. I mean, that's when people are doing stuff that you don't necessarily find interesting. It doesn't mean that there isn't something out there that's interesting. And I'm sure that there are entire crops of developers like growing up learning how to build on Solana because of this meme coin drive. And ultimately, having more builders is great. Whatever they turn around and build, learning new skills is great. So I think it's even if we don't see immediate pumps in DeFi, which I know pisses a lot of people off when they see pumps happening in Solana land, it's still overall, I think, bullish.
Where do you see? I mean, I'm just looking at DeFi Llama's like rankings right now. Let me pull this up. It's really interesting where the fee revenue is being driven right now. So obviously ETH is number 1, Lido number 2, which is a big part of they're kind of connected together. But then you have Radium at 150 million monthly. Jito after that. Solana's really been making quite a splash. Look at this with MetaMask with 68 million monthly average fees for their wallet.
Even, I mean, look at Avalanche. Avalanche is way up there too.
Yeah, but is that emissions or is that actual fees?
I couldn't tell you from looking at this, but I mean, whatever it is, I have to imagine it's not purely emissions. I mean, maybe it's transaction fees or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a big number.
Like, where do you see? Just to bring this back to Liquity, like where do you see Liquity kind of capturing fees? Like what's your fee capture structure there?
You're asking lots of questions that are purposely not yet put in the white paper.
Okay.
Which we're getting questions about. We will be communicating more on what that looks like because I know people are interested in it. But no comment.
No comment.
By the way, the MetaMask revenues, it's all from like the swap option within MetaMask, like or from what?
Yeah, you swap through MetaMask. They charge like or you use their front end. If you use the MetaMask front end, or if you use their app, they charge a 0.1 point.
It's pretty substantial.
Pretty 15 basis point fee or something like that.
I think it's multiples of that.
Who does that? Who does that? Like I think that there was a while that people wanted like the MetaMask airdrop, so it was like something that people. It was a function that people recommended others use in order to be maybe one day eligible for an airdrop. But other than that, like, I don't know if you really even do kind of a minimal search of where to swap your tokens. I don't think that there is any token that you rather that you should be swapping on MetaMask. All due respect.
There's no token you should be swapping through MetaMask because they route for other people. But just because it's more expensive doesn't mean people don't use it. It's like, you know, people going to a convenience store and paying 3 times as much for something.
Also, I think that they see it as very reliable. Like they see MetaMask as a reliable place, and they tell their fans. And by the way, for some users, this may be a very good choice. Like if they're not sure if they're gonna go to I don't know, another dApp, but they're not sure they will actually be at the right front end or whatever, then maybe they should be paying more and doing it through MetaMask. It has its advantages, but I think that for sure, if you're looking at like the actual price you're gonna get for your tokens, then consider some other alternatives. Let's say.
I know personally, I would definitely never use it. But
I used it once for the eligibility, like a few years ago when all these rumors were there and the function was very new. And I told myself, okay, this doesn't seem like necessarily the best trade, but like, who cares? I'm gonna get all these mask tokens maybe one day.
All right. Let's talk about the topic du jour of the last week of crypto Twitter, which is low float, high FTV.
Bad. People don't like it.
Okay. I let me preface this and say that if you're a new project that's launching, how are you supposed to get 50% of the tokens out, or close to 40%, even 30%?
I'm old school liquidity mining. Let's go back to 2020. Broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, but didn't a lot of those like 2020 tokens kind of go to zero as well too? Had big declines.
I mean, I think you have to assume that 99% of your tokens are going to go to zero. And of the ones from 2020, 2021, ones that are not zero, a lot of them were issued with very different mechanics from what they are now. And if you look at a lot of the ones that did the high FDV, low float, I mean, which ones really still exist? I have to imagine that's been harsher than overall legitimate projects that got a lot of tokens out quickly and tried to build with momentum in a fair way, because at the end of the day, your best marketing tool, if you have one, is your token, right? We've learned that time in and time out.
Mm-hmm.
And projects that have used tokens in ways that have been seen as taking advantage of the communities and their users and their supporters, I would go ahead and say have fared on average less well than ones that have not been seen to do that. And it's not the whole story. Yes, I'm sure that there are exceptions out there, and somebody will drop a ticker into the chat and say, this is the one that proves that Colin's completely wrong. But I think that there are more projects that gave away a lot of things to communities, that built, that have been successful over a few years, than ones that did the typical low float. And I'm talking really low float, not ones that did 25%, but ones that did like sub 2% list, and then everything else in FDV, where especially like the worst ones had lots and lots and lots of big private investors that came in, got those at very low valuations, and basically they've just been selling them blocks relentlessly. So I'm not aware of any that have done well over more than a couple of months, but maybe I'm wrong. Please correct me.
So what is the most optimal way, in your opinion? I mean, I know you said liquidity mining, but what's the most optimal way to get your tokens out there?
It depends on the project. That's my honest answer. I
because
think it really depends on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I understand, because let's just run through kind of how fundraising works at the moment. You have a good idea, Colin. You have a great idea. You have a great one right now. You want to get it built. It's expensive to do so. It's expensive to go to market. The best developers are really expensive and command high salaries. So you need to raise a couple $1 million, $4 or $5 million, $10, $20 million even, especially if the scope of the project is a lot bigger. And so, you start with a small round, raise $5 million. Then you go to a bigger round, you raise $20 million. And, this puts money in the bank so that you can build. But to do that, the valuations need to be high, because if you're raising, I don't know, let's say you're an incredibly big project, right? Like some of these examples that we can think of. If you're raising $50 million, you're not going to raise at $100 million. You're not going to give away 50% of your tokens at $100 million market cap. You're going to push it to $1 billion, $2 billion.
Look, is a project like the problem is you've got this trade-off where you are always trying to give away the least amount as possible to the investors that are willing to put money in and get the best valuation, right? That's in general, skipping over a few steps is where you're trying to go. So yes, what you're saying completely makes sense. I think what we lost and what has been very detrimental is that the only people that have access to be able to invest in those rounds that are at $250 million valuations for FDV are the same group of hands. And there have been people that have looked at how they can extend that and make that more accessible. And Kobe, I think he chimed in on this topic, and a lot of people talked about that. He's building a platform that's trying to do that to a certain extent. Ultimately, what we really need is, I don't know if it's regulatory overhaul, changes in laws, but better vehicles to allow smaller investors to come in, understand the risks they're taking, but if they're willing to take those risks, accept those risks, be able to access things in a way that is more akin to what we have in 2017, but with a lot more information and better, I guess, transparency for everyone of what risks they're taking, what's happening, because again, not every project is legitimate, but for legitimate projects, they should have something that is accessible and affordable to get the tokens to the right people. And like it or hate it, liquidity mining, as well as airdrop type things, have proven effective in getting tokens into the hands of people who want them and need them to use the project, or want to share in the success of a project that they like. So I think the best thing you can do, to come back to the original question, is make sure the people that are going to use it can get access to the token at the earliest point possible if you're going to give tokens out. That's my simple answer. But there's lots of ways to do that.
Yeah. I actually don't completely agree with you there, because I think there's a kind of a contradiction there between the last part of what you said, which I actually agree that the key is actually how do you deliver the tokens to the right hands. And I think that with liquidity mining, one of the things that happens is that too many people who are not the right hands have too much of an access for the token. And with the fact that the DeFi users are kind of sophisticated, at least some of them, they have ways of getting these tokens whenever possible. And for sure, not necessarily all of them have in general the same mindset and vision for the future as the protocol. I actually kind of like the concept of LBPs. And I don't know if you're also familiar with doing these launches or airdrops through stuff instead of liquidity mining, option mining and stuff like that. So you can get a cheaper price, but you'll still need to bring some of your capital. I'm very intrigued by that model actually. And one of the launches that, maybe the launch that I expect most this year, personally at least, is of Tapioca DAO. And Tapioca DAO has a very, in my opinion, interesting way of how they're going to do the launch with their own LBP that they're having. That's also going to be on Fjord Foundry, although it's specifically not a Fjord Foundry LBP. It's like an in-house LBP made by the Tapioca team. And also after that, you're going to have these like OTAP to get the tokens with this kind of a model of options. There are a lot of interesting articles from Matt, the founder of Tapioca, actually, about the whole concept of liquidity mining. The death of liquidity mining is one of the earliest ones, but he writes a lot about that stuff. But I definitely agree with another point that Colin has made earlier, that you have to make it like it has to be connected, and it has to relate to the actual environment in which a specific project is building and the actual audience they're building for, because not every audience will want the same and will appreciate the same aspects of a token launch. And also, I think that another key, and at least with Tapioca as well, it's something that I personally respect. The way they do it, at least in my opinion, is the whole aspect of transparency. Because I think if there's one thing that is really annoying about launches, is when you after the fact or while things are happening, you all of a sudden you start realizing, oh wait, it's not exactly what they said over there, but wait, they said that there was going to be an airdrop. What's happening? Like, why is it not happening? There's all kinds of issues that emerge every once in a while with a project, and you say like, I don't know, you could have been more, there could have been greater transparency. I can even think of at least one case that pretty recently we had one.
So one solution that I thought was pretty novel was that the issue is with these low float high FTV is that you just don't have enough supply on the market to facilitate true price discovery. Like when you're at 2 or 5%, it's just not enough. So one solution that I saw was that you could create a borrowing market where you could deposit stables or ETH as collateral and then borrow portions of the vested locked tokens to short. And the only way to get these tokens is to, again, post collateral. You could then borrow these tokens in size and then short the market if you wanted to, if you really thought that the high FTVs were kind of out of line. And this would solve a lot of the issues because now you could have more supply coming in. It's backed by collateral that people have posted up if they feel the FTVs are too high, and if the token actually goes down, then they profit from that.
I've seen a few different ones. I guess my reflection on that is, we have created this ultra portable, ultra transferable unit of account with cryptocurrencies and with ERC20 tokens or comparables on other networks. And I think having to resort to creating synthetic assets because of legal agreements and not putting these things out, to me is not an optimal solution. I would just say, kind of go back to first principles. Why do we have tokens in the first place? One thing that cryptocurrencies have proven extremely effective, and we're talking about product market fit with meme coins, but I think kind of if you go more globally, is allowing people to kind of pool resources together to kind of fight for to hold together in a decentralized movement of sorts. I'm trying to do this in a way where it doesn't sound like I'm saying equity, but because it's not what I'm trying to say. But it can be for a lot of different things, and tokens represent units in that kind of decentralized setup for different reasons. And some of them are pure investment vehicles and are rightfully called securities, but most of them, I would argue, are probably not. So if that's the reason that we have them, is kind of to get money or get resources together, each one of those will be unique depending on what they're trying to do and what they're trying to build as a community. And I think by allowing some users to have this privilege that exists inside the market for an extremely long time period, I think is incongruent with creating a decentralized community. So that's kind of my take on it. So, do you need to be able to raise money from private hands? Yes. Is that unethical? No. But creating this kind of permanent edge, I think, will ultimately be something that will be not favored by the market. I could be wrong because it's the market and I don't think I'm smarter than it. But I think that if two projects launch, and one of the nice things about cryptocurrencies is people can see what's going on. Two projects launch and one launches a token that has a legitimate fix or a legitimate reason to be there. And one launches in a community conducive way, I think it will do better than one that launches at the same time or similar times with similar conditions in a non-conducive way. Won't be 100% of the time, but I think on average, we'll see that trend emerging, and that's what we've seen. What that means for fundraising and for projects, yeah, there are a lot of implications there. But I think if you're going to launch a token, it should be done in a way that is not just favoring the same small group of investors who just keep running the same mill over and over and over again.
All right. I think we've discussed that enough. Last topic to cover for the day is that Justin Drake came out and said that he was becoming an advisor to the Ethereum Foundation. Justin Drake is an Ethereum Foundation, or sorry, Eigenlayer, sorry. He was becoming a advisor to Eigenlayer. He's getting significant Eigen token incentives, which he says will be millions of dollars vested over 3 years. And people had a lot of issues with this. I think that, we've rapidly shifted the Ethereum roadmap towards L2s, LSDs, restaking now. And having such a senior person at the Ethereum Foundation now essentially sign on with Eigen pushes, in some people's minds, Ethereum towards this future, right? Of having wide-scale LSD usage, wide-scale LRT usage, and there's a lot of pushback, actually. We even had it caused so much raucous that Vitalik actually came out and said that I'm really proud that Ethereum doesn't have any culture of trying to prevent people to speak their minds, even when they have negative feelings towards major things in the protocol or ecosystem. Some wave the ideal of open discourse as a flag, and some take it seriously.
I think that's awesome. For Vitalik's comment, it is something that makes Ethereum, I think, unique in this market. I would say Bitcoin is a similar standard that people will throw stuff at it, but very few projects actually regularly get into fights and disputes, and I think it shows how important the whole thing is, and proves that it's bigger than just a project run by a small group of people, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, Kobe was one of the people who came out and said that he was asking Vitalik in this post, how do you feel about the EF core developers taking life-changing money packages from projects built on Ethereum to become advisors when they may have conflicted incentives with Ethereum in the future, specifically around Eigenlayer? Yeah. Well, at least,
I don't like. What do you think about Justin Drake? Like, I don't see anything like wrong with it. Why can't he advise to, especially when he's been like so transparent about it? And like what's the sense of demanding these people to not do it? Like, let the community judge for themselves. You know, when someone becomes an advisor of many projects, and people feel that he's like I don't know, just grifting or whatever. So let the community decide. But like, and if Kobe feels that way, so same for him, by the way. But like, I don't know. Like, it's like, what do we expect these people to like avoid every opportunity they get?
I think the issue at hand is, and I wish we had Rex here today, because he's covered this pretty in depth, is that there's significant controversy within Ethereum about enshrining LSDs and LRTs as the de facto method for Ethereum, right? We had this whole discussion last year about Lido dominance and about Lido essentially capturing almost too much of Ethereum validators. And so I think that maybe we've kind of hit the point where people have kind of given up and said that, okay, this is the way forward now. LSDs, LRTs, they're enshrined now. We're not going back. We're not changing things anymore. And it's just the de facto way of operating, even though there are significant risks that come along with that.
I mean, my take on this is, yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are going to point fingers and say, yeah, this person is conflicted. At the end of the day, the great thing is there is a lot of discourse and things don't move that quickly. And it's a good opportunity for people to kind of not rest on their laurels and pay attention to what's going on, because things actually do matter. And if there are, conflicts, whether they're aware of them or not, it's a good thing to kind of consider. I think some people probably pointed out that Kobe's heavily involved with Lido, and obviously LRTs and LSTs, by which I mean Lido, have some kind of conflict in that there is only so much liquidity to go into Ethereum staking / restaking, and they are seen as kind of in some kind of Pareto setup. So if $1 or an ETH leaves Lido, it very likely goes to an LRT and vice versa. So some people would point that out. I don't think he's wrong in what he's saying. So I'm not trying to attack him for that. But it's a complex problem to solve. But I think it's good that Justin came out and was open about it. I don't know if he was prompted to do it, but I think it's good that he communicated about what he's doing. And at the end of the day, the way that it's framed in Kobe's tweet about what it is to be a core developer or researcher, and I'm not talking about Justin because as I understand he's actually paid by the Ethereum Foundation, but there's a lot of core developers, it's a decentralized project, that are not paid by the Ethereum Foundation. And or just paid on a grant basis. And we have to remember the kind of complexity around this and what does it mean to say, if you write a core code, like core client, does that mean that you have to live to a higher standard because you've contributed to open source code? Like, what line is he drawing? Are we talking specifically about people that are actively in the employ of the foundation? Or are we talking about anybody that's touching any of the code at a consensus level or an execution level? Who are we demanding what from? And then is that relevant to do? And then are we also asking the same thing of big projects? I remember about a year or so ago, a lot of people were upset about some changes that were being proposed by Uniswap. And I would say that Uniswap also has a lot of importance inside the Ethereum network and ecosystem. And if they want changes, they are taken seriously by researchers. If they put forth an EIP that's maybe above what a smaller project that has similar kind of requests, let's call them that, or ideas. And how do we balance all those things?
Yeah, just to
everybody's
bring this
incentivized
up,
to kind of see their things succeed. Then if everybody's incentivized to see their things succeed because they have tokens, we shouldn't be surprised that people are incentivized to see their tokens succeed.
Yeah, just a point on Kobe and Lido. Lido is working with Paradigm to fund a competitor with Eigenlayer called Symbiotic. So
is this
I'm
new?
not going to accuse anybody of bad things, especially people with lots of followers. Everybody's great.
Everybody is great. Just build more, build great products.
Do cool things.
Yeah, and also like I don't know. Is it capitalistic enough to tell someone, no, you can't also work for them? You know what I mean? No, it's kind of weird. Like to have too many restrictions. Like I agree that, but that should be some restrictions on some. Okay, like for sure. But like Colin said, like if there are, we should like be clear about them at least.
Well, we'll see more as this plays out. And you can find all the information on Leviathan News. So thank you for tuning in today. And Colin, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot for coming. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Again, if anybody missed it at the beginning, Colin is working diligently to bring Liquity V2 to market in the next few days. We have a lot more questions about how Liquity makes money, what if new tokenomics are going to be for this V2, and lots more, which he obviously can't answer right now. But we're going to get him back.
And when?
And when, exactly. So we're going to grill him.
The classic when.
You can do all the grilling you want when I'm grillable.
At an unknown date, at an unknown time in the future.
Exactly.
But thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And as always, you can follow Leviathan News at Leviathan_NOT News, both on Twitter and Telegram. And come join the Squid Cave. Earn some Leviathan points.
Yeah, come be active. Submit some headlines. Offer some guests for the stream, whatever. And
we have to
really a lot of alpha in the Squid Cave. What's that, Colin?
Do we have to disclose our squid holdings?
I'm not sure yet, but like just keep them on chain. Don't. But yeah, I earn some squid, folks.
Yeah, I earn some squid too.
It's actually kind of fun. To be honest, this whole squid thing is kind of fun, and it sparks the imagination a bit. Like you could start thinking of like all kinds of cool stuff. So it's actually kind of cool, but it's fun anyway. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks of course Sam for another day, a great day of hosting. Not just one of our hosts, ladies and gentlemen, the host of Leviathan News. Sam,
do what I can. All right, thanks everybody. We will be back tomorrow. We have Christian DeSiga coming on.
What's that? Where are they from?
So I asked Christian to come from, I pinged him on Twitter like quite a while ago, and he is building a project called Yeep Cash. He's previously at IQ Wiki, and he's got some cool stuff going. So I asked him to come on. So we'll have more about that tomorrow.
Yeah, actually, I hope to have another interview myself tomorrow with David Yak from Superseed. Hopefully after your show, we'll maybe be able to already do the show with him. Excited about his new project, Superseed. Feel free to check it out, and hopefully on Leviathan as well tomorrow.
Very cool. All right, thanks everybody, and we will see you again tomorrow.